Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another lecture of the AI-powered web development course. And before we dive into all the cool tools, the AI magic and building websites and all that, I want to take a moment and talk to you about something way more important. And that's your mindset. See, this course, it's not just about learning tech skills. It's about how you actually finish what you start, how you stay consistent, how you handle problems, and how you become the kind of person who doesn't just learn but builds, grows, and ships things. So this tutorial is like your personal guide to staying motivated, not just for this course, but honestly for anything worth doing in life. So in this tutorial, we're going to take a look at something that I think will really help keep you grounded and driven. And like whenever you feel low or unmotivated or you're just not feeling it, you can come back and watch this again. Seriously, I mean it. Bookmark it, save it, whatever works for you. Because trust me, you're going to need this more than once. Let's start with the first big idea, consistency. Now, you've probably heard that word a million times, right? But let me say it straight. Consistency is everything, like not just for this course, for life. If you're not consistent, you can't grow. You just can't. Imagine going to the gym once a week and expecting six-pack abs. It just doesn't work like that. And the same goes here. Even if it's just 20 minutes a day, those small efforts stacked over time build real momentum. That's how you go from I don't get it to I can do this with my eyes closed. You don't need motivation every day. What you need is a system, a habit. You wake up, you code, you learn, repeat. The second big one is discipline. And this one hits deep because discipline is what you use when motivation disappears, and it will disappear. There will be days where you'd rather scroll Instagram or, binge watch something on Netflix. But discipline, that's your inner voice saying, hey, let's just do 30 minutes today. That's it. And often, once you start, the energy comes back. That first step, that's the hardest. But you got to train your brain to say, I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. That's discipline, and that's what makes people unstoppable. Now, let's talk about problem solving. This one's really important, so stay with me. You will face problems in this course. I mean, no sugarcoating it. You'll run into bugs, broken installations, weird errors, dependencies not working. Like one day you'll be stuck on a missing semicolon and it'll drive you crazy. And you'll be tempted to say, maybe I'm not made for this. But no, stop. You are made for this. Every developer, every single one faces problems and they don't quit. They solve. That's what separates a beginner from a builder. Use every tool in your toolbox. Google it. Ask ChatGPT, check Stack Overflow, browse Quora threads, experiment. But most importantly, write it down. Yes, document the issue and the solution. Start your developer diary. Just grab a Google Doc or Notion page. Or go old school with a notebook. Every time you hit a problem, write what the issue was, what didn't work, what finally solved it. Trust me, you'll thank yourself later, because here's what happens. 6 weeks from now, you'll face that same error again. But instead of freaking out or wasting 45 minutes searching, you'll flip through your diary and go, oh yeah, I fixed that before. You'll feel like a genius, and honestly, you'll be one. And hey, this isn't just about saving time, it's about building confidence. Your diary becomes a record of growth. Proof that you're not stuck, you're leveling up. And that's powerful because sometimes we forget how far we've come. So keep that log. It's your secret weapon. I want to tell you a quick story. There's this guy, let's call him Asan, started learning web dev with zero background. Didn't even know what HTML stood for. First project broke everything. Couldn't even install Node.js properly. But instead of quitting, he kept a diary. Every problem he faced, he wrote it down. Every solution, logged. A year later, he had a 100-plus page document of errors and answers, and now he freelances, builds websites for clients, and helps juniors solve the same bugs he once feared. Not because he was gifted, but because he was consistent, disciplined, and he documented his journey. So if there's one thing you take from this session, it's this: do the work, track the work, own the work. Let me share a little mantra I want you to write down. You can put it at the front of your diary or pin it on your wall. Ready? Every problem I face is a chance to grow. I will be consistent, not perfect. I will finish what I start. I will show up every day, even when I don't feel like it. Say it again if you have to. Let it sink in. Because finishing, that's rare. Anyone can start, but not everyone finishes. Be the finisher. And look, some days will be rough. You'll feel stuck. You'll want to quit. You'll feel like AI knows everything and you know nothing. But trust me, you are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where you need to be. This is your chapter. This is your journey. And I'm right here with you, every step of the way. So take a deep breath. Open your IDE. Open your diary. And take the next step, even if it's small. Just take it. You've got this. Let's do it. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. I believe you've got some energy and motivation now for the coming lectures. See you in the next one. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. And before we go any further into tools or writing code or building websites, let's just hit pause for a moment and talk about something super important. Let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever really thought about what the internet is? Like, what actually happens when you open a website? Where does it live? Where is all that data stored? How does it show up on your phone screen in like less than a second? It feels like magic, right? But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and explain exactly what the internet is in the simplest, clearest way possible. Because once you understand this, everything you build in this course is going to make a whole lot more sense. Now, before we dive into that, let's just take a quick breath and remember what we did in our last lecture. We talked about mindset, and not just motivational fluff, but real powerful habits that make or break your learning journey. We explored consistency, showing up even when you're not feeling it. We talked about discipline, doing the work even on days you don't want to. And we introduced something called the developer diary, where you write down the problems you face and how you solve them, because that's how real developers grow. All right, now back to today. Let's try and really understand this thing we use every day, the internet. Okay, so in the simplest words, the internet is a giant network of computers that can talk to each other. That's it. Not scary, not complicated, just computers sending and receiving information. Imagine for a second that every computer is like a house in a huge city, and each house has its own unique address, called an IP address. Now, let's say you want to send a letter to your friend who lives across town. You write the letter, you drop it off in the mailbox, and then it travels through the post office, gets sorted, and ends up at their doorstep. That's basically how the internet works. Every time you open a website or search something on Google, your computer is writing a digital letter, sending it across this massive network and asking, hey, can you send me this web page? And somewhere there's another computer called a server that stores that web page, and it says, sure, here you go, and sends back the files to your screen. Boom. Now you're watching a YouTube video or reading an article or checking out a meme. And here's the mind-blowing part. That entire request, it travels through Wi-Fi routers, maybe fiber optic cables, maybe even undersea cables that are literally laid at the bottom of oceans. Or it could go up to satellites in the sky and bounce back to Earth. All that just to get you that one little web page. So yeah, The internet is powerful, but at its core, it's really just a way to connect computers all over the world. Let's make it even more relatable. Think of it like ordering food online. You're the customer. The restaurant is the server. The delivery guy is the internet. You place an order, that's the request. The kitchen cooks the food, that's the server processing. And then it gets delivered to your house, that's the response. Same thing happens when you type a website address and hit enter. You're placing an order. The server cooks up the files, HTML, CSS, maybe some JavaScript, and the internet delivers it right to your browser. So anytime you see a website, that website is actually just a bunch of code files living on a server somewhere. And your browser is doing the work of asking for those files and showing them to you in a nice layout. Now, one question you might have is, where is the internet exactly? Like, where does it live? And the answer is everywhere. It's not in one place. It's not floating in the clouds. It's made up of millions of servers and routers and cables all working together. Some of those servers are in massive buildings called data centers, like the ones Google or Amazon run. Others are smaller, like a shared server hosting a personal blog. But they're all connected, and they all follow the same set of rules, called protocols, to send and receive information. Now, let's talk about one key relationship you need to remember. It's called the client-server model. You, the browser, the device, you are the client. The website, the thing you want to visit, lives on a server. And when you open the site, your device sends a request to the server, and the server sends a response back. Simple, beautiful, efficient. And this concept, this request-response dance, is the foundation of all web development. And it's the stage where you, as a developer, will perform your magic. Because once you build a website, you'll eventually put it on a server, and you'll want people, your users, your clients, to be able to request it. Now, why are we spending a full lecture on this before even writing a line of code? Well, because once you understand this, once it clicks, you're no longer just copying tutorials. You're not just watching code run. You understand how and why things work. And here's the cool part. AI tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or Blackbox, they work better when you understand the flow. If you know how the internet works, you can ask better questions. You can debug smarter. And you can even use AI to map out traffic flows, identify slow responses, or suggest optimizations. But if you don't understand what's actually happening behind the scenes, AI won't make you better. It'll just make you more confused. So yeah, this is one of those foundational lectures. And I'm proud of you for watching all the way through. It means you care not just about coding, but about becoming a real developer. Now, before we close, let me give you a tiny task. I want you to open your developer diary, yeah, that one from last lecture, and write, in your own words, what is the internet? Explain it like you're teaching it to a 10-year-old. Use examples. Use your own language. And if you want, draw it out like a map with houses, mailboxes, and servers. The simpler you can make it, the better you understand it. All right, deep breath, that was a lot. But hopefully, now you see the internet in a whole new way. Not just as some magical cloud, but as a real, powerful, complex, yet beautifully simple system that you'll soon be building for. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. See you in the next lecture, where we will see the details of what we are going to learn in this course. You're doing great. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. So in our last session, we explored the concept of the internet, what it actually is, how it works, and how it's basically the invisible force powering everything we'll build in this course. We talked about how data moves, how requests are made, what servers do, and why it's so important to understand all that before we even write a single line of code. Now that we've got that base knowledge, it's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. because in this session, I want to walk you through everything we'll be learning in this course, from start to finish. This is going to be your full roadmap. And I promise, once you know what's coming, you're going to feel more focused, more excited, and more confident about the journey ahead. Now, just to be super clear, this is not a typical copy-paste coding course. We're doing things the right way. That means we'll first learn how to manually build each part of a website. We'll write real code, understand the logic, and do things from scratch. And once you've built it with your hands, we'll then learn how to use free AI tools to do the same task faster, smarter, and more efficiently. So, it's kind of like this. You learn to walk first, then we give you a bicycle, and finally, we show you how to ride a rocket. All right, let's get into it. We're going to begin with the basics of HTML. You'll learn what HTML actually is, why it matters, and how every web page is built on top of it. We'll write our first web page manually. We'll explore all the different tags like headings, paragraphs, links, buttons, images, and sections. We'll look at forms, lists, navbars, and footers, one step at a time. Then we'll bring in the AI. I'll show you how to prompt ChatGPT or other free tools to generate HTML for you. Like you can say, give me a landing page with a hero section, about section, and contact form. And boom, it'll write the code for you. But here's the trick, because you already built that manually, you'll actually understand what the AI is doing. You'll be able to tweak it, fix bugs, and take control. Then we move into CSS. That's the styling language of the web. It's what makes websites look good. Colors, fonts, layouts, borders, shadows, animations, you name it. We'll start with manual styling. We'll explore things like the box model, padding, margins, font styling, colors, backgrounds, gradients, and more. We'll use Flexbox and Grid to arrange content and make things responsive. After that, we'll do the same thing, bring in the AI. You'll see how to ask AI tools to generate CSS for cards, buttons, layouts, animations. For example, you could say, generate a CSS style for a button with hover animation and drop shadow. And just like that, you'll get working code. Again, only useful because you know how it works. Next, we'll dive into JavaScript. This is the language that brings websites to life. Whenever you click a button and something happens, that's JavaScript. We'll start from the basics. Variables, data types, conditions, loops, functions. Then we'll move into the DOM, how to change elements with JavaScript. We'll build simple interactive features like modals, toggles, form validation. Then we'll show how to use AI tools to speed up those tasks. You can say, generate a JavaScript function that validates an email address and shows an error message. Or write code to open a pop-up when I click this button. The tools will do it, but again, you'll understand what that code means. After that, we'll cover responsive web design. That means making your websites look good on desktops, tablets, and phones. We'll learn about media queries, layout shifts, breakpoints, mobile-first design. We'll build everything manually first, adjusting layout and font sizes and columns. Then we'll learn how to use AI to generate mobile-responsive HTML and CSS. Like you could ask, give me a responsive 3-column layout that becomes 1 column on mobile. And yes, AI will give you clean code, but only because you've already done it by hand. Next, we'll explore version control using Git and GitHub. You'll learn how to save your code, track changes, go back in time, and collaborate with others. We'll go step by step, manual first. We'll write commit messages, push to GitHub, and create repositories. Then we'll use AI to help generate commit messages, explain Git errors, and summarize pull requests. It's like having a smart teammate. Then comes the fun part, real projects. You're going to build complete websites, like a portfolio site, a blog, a product landing page, and maybe even a basic e-commerce template. We'll do it all manually first, and then we'll ask AI to replicate the same project faster. But because you did it by hand first, you'll be able to compare, improve, and even teach others how it works. We'll also learn about hosting and deployment, how to take your site live for the world to see. We'll use platforms like GitHub Pages, Netlify, and Vercel. We'll connect custom domains. You'll learn how to upload files manually and then use AI to help with commands, configurations, and error handling. And finally, once you're comfortable with building and deploying, we'll take it to the next level. We'll explore how to connect AI APIs into your own websites. You'll learn how to add ChatGPT to your site, or build a smart chatbot, or generate content automatically using AI. We'll cover how APIs work, how to make requests, and how to write integration code manually. Then we'll let AI tools help with fetch requests, endpoint management, and testing. It's going to be a complete transformation. You'll go from someone who doesn't know how websites work to someone who can build fast, modern, professional websites manually and with AI. By the end of this course, you'll be able to understand core web technologies, use AI tools the smart way, build beautiful, fast, and functional websites, solve real problems, and launch real projects. And honestly, just feel confident as a modern web developer. And don't worry, I'll be right here with you the whole way. You don't need to rush. Take your time, follow the steps, and trust the process, because I've seen it work again and again. And I know you're going to surprise yourself. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. See you in the next lecture, where we'll explore what tools you need to install and how to set up your system for success. Let's do this, one step at a time. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. In our last lecture, we walked through everything you'll be learning in this course, step by step. We covered how we'll first learn to build websites manually, and then how we'll use free AI tools to do those same tasks smarter and faster. We talked about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, version control, projects, deployment, AI integrations, and hopefully you got a clear vision of just how powerful this course is going to be. Now, let's get a little more hands-on. Before we start coding, we need the right tools installed. So in this lecture, we're going to do three things. First, we'll install Visual Studio Code. That's the text editor we'll use to write all of our code. Second, we'll install a web browser like Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, which we'll use to view and test our websites. And third, I'll introduce you to HTML, the backbone of every single web page on the internet. So go ahead, grab your laptop, plug in your charger, and let's get started. All right, so the first thing we need is something called Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short. It's a free code editor made by Microsoft. It's fast, lightweight, powerful, and honestly, it's the best choice for web developers. Let's open your browser and head to https://code.visualstudio.com chatras. Once you're there, you'll see a download button right on the home page. Click it, and it should automatically detect your operating system, whether you're on Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Click download and then just wait a bit while it installs. Once the download finishes, open the file and follow the install instructions. Just keep clicking next and accept the defaults unless you know what you're doing. When you reach the final step, make sure you check the box that says Add to Path or Open with Code so that it's easier to launch VS Code from anywhere. Now, while that installs, let me just say, this is the tool you'll be using every single day. It's where your code lives. It's where you build. So get comfortable with it. We'll go through the interface together in the next few sessions too. Don't worry. All right, once it's installed, go ahead and open VS Code. If it takes a second to load, that's normal. Now, the second tool we need is a browser. This is how you'll view and interact with your websites. My personal recommendation is Google Chrome, but Firefox also works great. If you don't have Chrome, go to https://www.google.com Chrome by. download the latest version, click the install file, let it run. Once that's done, you now have both tools you need to begin building websites like a pro. All right, take a small break here if needed, because now we're diving into the real stuff. Let's talk about HTML. So what is HTML? Well, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. But let me make it simple. HTML is just a way to tell the browser what to show. For example, you can see two different text, normal text and after HTML. The after HTML has bullets and other formats such as H2O. HTML is very easy, and literally kid of 4th standard can learn it in no time. It's not a programming language like JavaScript, it's a markup language, which means it's used to mark parts of your content. Like, hey browser, this is a heading. Hey browser, this is a paragraph. Hey browser, this is a link to another page. HTML is the structure of your website, like the bones in your body. Without it, nothing shows up. Everything else, CSS, JavaScript, images, all those things depend on HTML to exist. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're writing a blog post in a notebook. You use a big title at the top, that's a heading. Then you write a paragraph, that's a paragraph tag. Maybe you underline something important, that's bold or emphasis. Maybe you add an image, you paste a photo there. That's how HTML works. It tells the browser how to arrange and show all that stuff. Now, HTML uses something called tags. These are special pieces of code wrapped in angle brackets like paragraph tag, heading tag, anchor tag, image tag. We'll be exploring each of these as we build actual websites. But for now, just understand HTML is how we talk to the browser. Now, why do we even need a browser for this? Why can't we just run HTML in VS Code? Well, because HTML isn't an app or a program. It's just a bunch of instructions. The browser is the thing that reads those instructions and shows them on the screen in a way people can actually use. VS Code helps us write the code, but Chrome or Firefox or Edge, they are the ones that render it. That's why we need both. If you open your browser and right-click and then view source code, you can see all the elements shown to you are coded with HTML elements. Now, if you click on the inspect element and then click on this arrow U and then hover over, you will see different boxes. Now, these are HTML elements. We will explore each one of them later on with details. And trust me, as we go forward, you'll constantly be switching between your code editor and your browser. You'll write code in VS Code and preview it live in the browser, make changes, save, refresh, repeat. That becomes your rhythm. So today, just make sure you've installed VS Code. You've installed a browser machine, and you understand what HTML is and why it matters. In the next lecture, we'll write our very first HTML page together. We'll open up VS Code, create a new file, write some tags, and launch it in the browser to see what happens. That's going to be your first real win, and trust me, it'll feel awesome. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. See you in the next lecture, where we will write and explain your first real HTML page from scratch. Let's keep building momentum. See you there. Hello everyone. Welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. So in our last lecture, we installed the two most important tools you'll be using throughout your journey: Visual Studio Code and a modern web browser like Chrome. We also introduced the concept of HTML, what it is, how it works, and why it's the backbone of every website. Now that you've got your tools ready and you understand what HTML is in theory, let's move one step further. In this lecture, we'll talk about the actual tags, or as they're officially called, HTML elements. These are the building blocks, the Legos of the web. If you understand how these elements work, you can build anything. So let's break it down in the most simple way. An HTML element is usually made up of three parts: an opening tag, some content, and a closing tag. For example, to create a paragraph, you would write, Now let me go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code, and I'll create a new file called elements.html. We'll use this file to give you a live demonstration of some basic HTML elements. Just remember, every HTML file should always be saved with the .html extension. That's how the browser knows it's an HTML document and can display it properly. Let's talk about paragraph tag, opening p tag, then your text, and then a closing p tag. So the full element would sound like opening p tag. This is a paragraph. Closing p tag. Now let's save it and see how it looks like in browser. You'll notice the file appears with a Chrome icon. When you click on it, the content will automatically open in your browser. Now here you will see content of your elements. In my case, I had only paragraph tag, so you can see the content here. Now, let's go over a few of the most commonly used elements. These are ones you'll use again and again, whether you're writing by hand or asking AI to generate them for you. Let's start with headings. In HTML, headings range from H1 tag to H6 tag. The H1 tag is the biggest and most important heading. The H6 tag is the smallest. So, for example, if you want to create a page title, you would write opening H1 tag. Welcome to my website, then closing H1 tag. Subheadings would look like opening H2 tag, this is a subheading, then closing H2 tag, and so on. Now let me save the file and refresh the browser. So here you can see the content of H1 tags and H2. You'll usually have only one H1 tag per page. Think of it like your chapter title, and the rest help organize the content into meaningful sections. Next, we've got the paragraph tag. Very simple. To write a basic paragraph, you use opening p tag. This is just a normal paragraph of text. Then closing p tag. You'll use this whenever you want to write body content. Text descriptions, introductions, explanations, anything that isn't a heading. Then comes the anchor tag. This is how you create links to other pages or websites. You'll write, opening a tag with an href attribute set to the URL, your link text, then closing a tag. Example, opening a tag, href equals https:/example.com. Click here to visit, and then closing a tag. The href attribute tells the browser where to go when the user clicks. That's what makes the web, the web. Now let's talk about the image tag. This one's a little different. It doesn't need a closing tag. It's what we call self-closing. To add an image, you use the image tag with a source and alt attribute. So you would write image tag source equals to. Let me add some source for picture. I can find one on Google and copy its URL and paste here. Let me search on Google cute cat. And let me copy the URL from this and paste it there. Alt equals a cute cat picture. The source attribute is the file path to your image, and the alt attribute gives a description in case the image fails to load, or for screen readers. Next up, lists. There are two types. Ordered lists, which use the opening OL tag and closing OL tag. These are numbered. Unordered lists, which use the UL tag. These are bulleted. Inside both, each list item goes inside an opening LI tag and a closing LI tag. So a bulleted list would look like opening UL tag, opening LI tag, HTML, closing LI tag, opening LI tag, CSS, closing LI tag, opening LI tag, JavaScript, closing LI tag, closing UL tag. Now let's move to the div element. This is a generic container. It doesn't do anything visually, but it groups other elements together. For example, opening div tag, opening H2 tag, our services, Closing H2 tag, opening P tag. We offer web development, design, and AI solutions. Closing P tag, closing div tag. Think of it like a box that holds other boxes. You'll use the div tag a lot, especially once we start styling with CSS or building layouts. There's also the span tag, which is kind of like a smaller version of div. So, here's something really important to understand when working with HTML. Some elements are what we call block level, and others are inline. Now, block level elements like div, p, or h1 always take up the full width of the page. Even if the content inside is small, they still stretch all the way across. For example, if you add two tags one after another, they will appear on separate lines, like this. You can use it to style or control small parts of text inside a paragraph. Opening p tag, this is the first paragraph. Closing p tag, opening p tag, this is the second paragraph. Closing p tag. They stack vertically. Each one pushes the next one to a new line. But now, let's talk about inline elements. These don't break the flow of the text. They just sit within the line right next to the other content. View of to apply style to p tag. For example, opening p tag, this is opening span tag, style equals color red, very important. Closing span tag, to know closing p tag. Now, don't worry if that part with style equals color red feels confusing right now. That's a little bit of CSS. We'll cover that in detail later. Then we've got a few more basic tags like line break tag, written as BR. Horizontal rule tag, written as HR. Strong tag, which makes text bold. M tag, which makes text italic. So something like opening P tag. This is opening strong tag, bold, closing strong tag, and opening M tag, italic. Closing M tag text, closing P tag. The important thing is to see how readable HTML really is. It almost looks like English once you get the hang of it. Now let me pause here for a second and just say this. You don't need to memorize all of these elements. Seriously, you'll use them so much that they'll stick in your brain naturally. Plus, you'll always have Google or ChatGPT. But it's still super important to know what these elements do and how they behave. That's the only way you'll be able to fix bugs, modify AI-generated code, or build custom features later. In upcoming lectures, we'll go deeper into each element. For example, we'll be having a separate session on heading tags. We'll build entire lists manually. We'll add images, edit links, and experiment with text formatting. And we'll start combining elements to build full sections. Today, though, I just wanted you to meet your main characters. These are the HTML tags that will be with you every step of the way. You'll grow with them. You'll experiment with them. See? And yeah, you'll probably forget a few at first, and that's fine. One last quick thing before we wrap up. All these elements are used inside an HTML file. You'll eventually wrap them inside the opening HTML tag and body tag, and a few more tags that define the full page structure. But don't worry about that just yet. We'll get there in the very next session. For now, just open your VS Code. Create a file called elements.html and start typing some of these elements yourself. Try h1, p, a, image, ul, div, even a mix of them. Then open the file in your browser and see what it looks like. That's how you learn, by doing, by seeing, and by fixing. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. See you in the next one, where we'll write your first complete HTML page together and explore how HTML structure works from top to bottom. You're doing amazing. Keep going. See you there. Welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. In the last session, we took a deep dive into the world of HTML elements. We explored headings, paragraphs, links, images, divs, spans, you name it. We also created a file called elements.html, and I showed you how all those elements work inside the browser. Now in today's lecture, we're going to zoom into just one of those elements, and that's the good old paragraph tag, or what we call the P tag. And I know what you're thinking. It's just a paragraph. What's the big deal? But trust me, this little tag has layers. There's a lot going on under the hood. And by the end of this lecture, you'll be using it like a pro. All right, so let me go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. And I'll open the file we created earlier, elements.html. Or you can create a brand new file called paragraphs.html if you want to stay organized. Let's start with the absolute basics. A paragraph in HTML is created using the opening P tag and the closing P tag. So your code looks like this. Opening P tag, this is my first paragraph. Closing P tag. Let me type that in right here so you can see it live. Now I'll go ahead and save the file and open it in my browser. And boom, there's our paragraph. Now here's something really important. By default, every paragraph tag creates some space before and after it. This is controlled by the browser's default styling, also known as the user agent style sheet. So if I type opening P tag, this is my first paragraph, closing P tag, and right after that, another paragraph, opening P tag. This is my second paragraph, closing P tag. You'll notice they show up as two separate blocks, each with a little space between them. Paragraphs are block-level elements. That means they always start on a new line, and they take up the full width of the container. Even if there's only one word in there, it stretches the full line. Let's test this. I'll write opening P tag, hello, closing P tag, and then opening P tag, world. Closing P tag. See how each word appears on its own line? That's because paragraphs are block level. Now, what if you hit enter in your code and break a line inside a paragraph? Let's try this, opening P tag. This is the first line. Now I press enter here, and this is the second line, closing P tag. Let me save and refresh, and you'll notice both lines are still on the same line in the browser. That's because HTML doesn't care about how your code looks in the editor. It ignores extra spaces, tabs, and line breaks inside paragraph tags. If you really want to break a line inside a paragraph, you have to use the line break tag, also known as BR. So let me do that now. Opening P tag, this is the first line, BR tag. This is the second line, closing P tag. Now refresh the browser, and boom, now it shows up on two lines. So remember, BR stands for break. Use it inside paragraphs when you want to force a line break, but don't go overboard. It's not a substitute for writing proper structure. Now let me show you another cool thing. What if you write two spaces between words? Like, this is space text. Let's try it. I'll type opening P tag, this is, and I'm hitting spacebar like 5 times, space text, closing P tag. Save it and refresh. Still just one space. Yep, HTML collapses white space. That means multiple spaces become just one. So if you really want extra spaces, you have to use something called a non-breaking space, which is written as, for example, this is extra spaced text. We'll cover entities like in detail later, but I just wanted you to know why those spaces vanish. Okay? Now let's talk about nesting. Can you put a paragraph inside another paragraph? Let me show you. Opening P tag. This is a paragraph, and inside that, I'll try to put another opening P tag and more text, then closing both. Save and refresh. See that weird result? Yeah. You're not allowed to nest paragraph tags. Browsers will auto-correct it in their own way, but it often leads to broken layouts. So, never nest paragraphs. It's invalid HTML. All right. Now, let me tell you something useful. When using AI tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or even Notion AI, you can easily generate paragraphs with just a prompt. For example, you could say, generate an HTML paragraph introducing a portfolio website. And it might give you something like, opening P tag, welcome to my portfolio. Here you'll find a showcase of my latest web development and design projects, closing P tag. See, that's great. But make sure you understand what it generates. You should always be able to read AI code and tweak it, never just copy and paste blindly. Okay, now what if you want to style your paragraphs? Make them bold, change color, font size. That's where CSS comes in. We'll get to that in future lectures. But just to show you briefly, inside your paragraph, you can use inline styles, like this. Opening P tag, style equals color, colon blue semicolon. This is blue text, closing P tag. We'll break this down properly later, but this is just to plant the seed. All right, let's review what we learned about paragraph tags today. They use opening and closing P tags. They are block level, always on a new line. Extra spaces and line breaks in code are ignored. Use BR tag to force line breaks. Don't nest paragraphs. Use AI tools for generation, but always verify, and you'll style them later using CSS. Now let's do one final live example together before we wrap this up. I'll open Visual Studio Code and write 3 paragraphs. One normal one with a line break and one with a blue color. Save it, and let's view it in the browser. Looks good, right? Simple, clean, and readable. That's the power of understanding a basic tag deeply. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. See you in the next one, where we'll move into HTML headings and explore their structure, hierarchy, and how to use them effectively for accessibility and SEO. Keep practicing and keep building. Welcome back to yet another lecture of our AI-powered web development course. So in our last session, we explored HTML paragraph tags in full detail. We saw how paragraph elements behave in the browser, how whitespace is handled, how to force line breaks using the break tag, and even how to use AI to generate custom content inside paragraph tags. We also saw a few do's and don'ts, like never nesting paragraph tags, and we wrapped it all up with some real examples. Now today, we're going to dive into another foundational concept, HTML heading tags. These are absolutely critical, not just for how your site looks, but also for structure, accessibility, and SEO. So yeah, even though they may look simple on the surface, heading tags carry a lot of weight. Let's get into it. All right. Let me open up Visual Studio Code and I'll create a new file called headings.html. Give it just a second to load. And now I'll also open it up in the browser side by side so we can see the results as we go. Okay, let's begin with the basics. HTML provides 6 heading tags from H1 to H6. So you have H1. This is the largest and most important heading. H2, slightly smaller, H3, a bit smaller than that, H4, H5, and H6 follow the same pattern all the way down. Let's see that in action. I'll write opening H1 tag. This is an H1 heading, closing H1 tag, opening H2 tag. This is an H2 heading, closing H2 tag, opening H3 tag. This is an H3 heading, closing H3 tag, and continue all the way to H6. Now let me save the file and refresh the browser. You'll immediately see the visual difference. H1 is big and bold. H2 is smaller. H3 even smaller. H6 is the tiniest. So here's the rule of thumb. Only use one H1 tag per page. That should be your main page title. Think of it like the headline of a newspaper. Everything else, H2 to H6, are subheadings that create structure. Now let's talk about hierarchy. Headings work like an outline. H1 is your chapter title. H2 are your sections. H3 are subsections under H2, and so on. Let's build a little outline together. Opening H1 tag, my portfolio. closing H1 tag, opening H2 tag, projects, closing H2 tag, opening H3 tag, web design, closing H3 tag, opening H3 tag, app development, closing H3 tag, opening H2 tag, about me, closing H2 tag, opening H2 tag, contact, closing H2 tag. See how clean and logical that structure is? It helps users read your content. It helps search engines crawl your site. And it helps screen readers guide visually impaired users through your page. Now, let me show you something. If I swap the order randomly, like putting an H4 directly under an H1 without any H2 or H3, the browser won't break, but your document structure becomes confusing. So it's not just about how things look, it's about how they're organized. Always try to follow the heading hierarchy. It's like writing a book with proper chapters and sections. Okay, now you might be wondering, can I style these headings? Yes, of course. Just like with paragraphs, you can apply inline styles. Let's try this. Opening H2 tag, style equals color, green, semicolon. Project section, closing H2 tag. Save, refresh, and yep, now it's green. But remember, we'll handle styling properly with CSS in upcoming lectures. For now, this is just to show you what's possible. Now here's something interesting about headings. Even if you don't style them, browsers will automatically bold them and add space. That's part of their default behavior. So even without any CSS, headings visually stand out. Let me now show you a bad example. Let's say someone writes everything as H1 tags. Opening H1 tag, home, closing H1 tag, opening H1 tag, about, closing H1 tag, opening H1 tag, contact, closing H1 tag. Sure, it looks bold. But from a structure and SEO perspective, this is terrible. Search engines won't know which one is the main title, and screen readers may get confused. So yeah, use headings intelligently, not just for size or boldness. Quick side tip. If you ever want to preview your headings quickly, try a browser extension called HTML5 Outliner. It shows you how your document is structured like a table of contents. Really useful. All right, let's wrap it up with a mini demo. I'll create a basic portfolio structure with headings only. H1, my portfolio. H2, projects. H3, web development. H3, app design. H2, about me. H2, contact now. I'll open this in the browser, and as you can see, even without any styling, this gives a perfect content outline. It's readable, it's structured, and it's clean. That's what good HTML should always be. So, quick recap. Headings go from H1 to H6. Use only one H1 per page. Follow proper hierarchy, H1, H2, H3. Don't skip heading levels randomly. Style them later with CSS. Use AI to generate them, but always review structure. Think of them like book chapters, not just bold text. With this, our current lecture comes to an end. In the next one, we'll start working some more HTML tags with details. You're doing great. Keep going, and I'll see you in the next session.